guys, so we wanted to do a video today on something that's come up quite regularly to us as coaches, from athletes that have come to visit us for Enna's Pool, swim analysis, and amongst new coached athletes as well. So hopefully we'll give you a little bit of information and this might help. So the topic is, why can't I swim straight in open water? So Tom, why might we hear that from an athlete, do you think?
Right, okay, so from my perspective, this is a question that always frustrates me a little bit, because it's not that you can't swim straight in open water, you just can't swim straight, right? Like, none of us can really swim straight. Think about it logically, okay? If you had your eyes closed and you were asked to walk in a straight line, you'd struggle, right? We don't drive with our eyes closed, do we? We don't drive with our eyes closed for like 20 seconds at a time, then open them briefly and then close them again.
Hopefully not.
The reality is that to drive in a straight line, or to walk in a straight line, or to run in a straight line, it's quite important to have your eyes open to see where you're going, and you instinctively make adjustments constantly to account for that. So it's not that you can't swim straight in open water. None of us really swim straight. There are probably going to be extremes like bandwidth. So some people will swim a little bit straighter than most because of the way that their technique is executed. But the reality is, in the pool, you've got black line, you've got lane rope, and we're making micro adjustments. I mean, some people aren't even very good at making micro adjustments in the pool, but the reality is that's what happens. And then in open water, you can't make those micro adjustments because when your face is in the water, there's very little for you to judge off, because it's not like you have a black line to follow, right? And the major issue really is that people just don't spot frequently enough. So, you know, we see a lot of people, they're like, they spot and then they swim like 10, 20 strokes and then they spot again. Like I said, if you were to do that when you were driving, you wouldn't drive in a straight line or walk in a straight line if you did that when you were walking. Try it if you're, well, don't try it driving, obviously.
Disclaimer, don't try this at home.
But you could try it potentially walking and see how straight you walk, okay? And it probably isn't very straight. Certainly if you ran, you would probably be all over the place. So I think the problem isn't that you can't swim straight, it's that you just probably don't spot frequently enough.
So that leads me on to the next question then, Tom. So how often should people spot when they're swimming open water?
It's almost as if you had the questions planned on.
I know, it's strange.
So just to give you an example, I spot every 6 strokes. Okay, so if we take one arm cycle, that's a stroke, I'm counting that as 6 strokes. So you might call it every 3 if you take one right arm, one left arm as a single stroke. Okay, so like your Garmin counts one full right, one full left as a stroke, yeah, because obviously it's taking it off one wrist. Does that make sense? But I'm counting every arm cycle as a stroke. So I spot every 6 by default. That's sort of my regular pattern. If I'm swimming on my own, or I'm leading the swim, which isn't very often, but it happens occasionally, I would probably spot every 6. I tend to spot only on my right breath. So my pattern, certainly for the first 1 to 2k of an open water swim, is spot on my right breath, breathe 3 strokes later on my left, and then 3 strokes, and then spot on my right breath, if that makes sense, okay? So obviously that's quite frequent. Most people that we tend to see, Lauren, I think would spot far less frequently than that. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's part of the problem. I would very rarely spot less frequently than every 6 strokes.
Yeah.
I might spot more often. So for example, if the buoys are hard to see because they're either too small or the wrong colour, which sometimes happen, or there's a lot of visual noise. So for those of you that maybe have raced at, say, Tenby, you might remember that sometimes there's a lot of boats in the water, and that could affect like what you can see easily, because there's a lot of other things that draw your eye line away from the buoys. Staffs can be similar. There's a lot of buoys in the water there sometimes. So if I'm not able to spot the buoys as easily, I might spot more frequently. Obviously, if the water's very choppy, you might spot more frequently because you might not see the buoy when you spot the first time. If the swell is very high, it literally may block your view to the buoy. Or if there's other things that obscure my view, like other swimmers, I might have to spot more frequently. Often if I'm coming up to a buoy, I'll spot more frequently because, of course, you bottleneck at a buoy, and so of course the gaps that you need to see may only come up momentarily. So you need to look for those as you're spotting. So I might spot every stroke or every right breath, for example, potentially. I wouldn't swim polo stroke if I wanted to see more often. We see a lot of people do that. Like they just swim head up polo. Well, that's not really spotting. That's just swimming head up polo, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. The only time I've ever done that is in an old style mass start at Lanzarote, where you've got 200 people swimming around each other, bottlenecking into the first turn, and you literally can't see anything. So the only way to see is to do that.
So what you're really saying here then, Tom, is if we're spotting that regularly, we're just sense checking where we're going. We should already be going in the right direction and just sense checking it rather than constantly having to redirect ourselves.
Yeah, so this is the other thing that people misunderstand about spotting. What people think spotting is looking. It's not. Spotting is checking where you already think you're going. So you already know roughly where the boy is. So look, when you look in your rearview mirror, oh no, that's not true. Because I've been in the car with a lot of people who don't look in their rearview mirror, and I've cycled and driven behind lots of people that don't look in their rearview mirror. But what should happen with your rearview mirror in your car is that you should be just checking your rearview mirror or your wing mirrors for what you already know to be the case, right? So you already know what's going on behind you because of how frequently you check, and you're just sense checking and double checking that nothing else has happened. The same applies to spotting when you're swimming. All you're doing is you're checking what's already there, like what you already know to be the case. So you already know where you expect the buoy to be. All you're doing is having a glance to see if you're right. And obviously you need to spot frequently enough to make that the case. If what happens again is a lot of people, what they do is they swim hoping or assuming that they're going to be swimming in a straight line, which we've already said is unlikely to be the case, no matter how good a swimmer you are. And then what they do is they then look to see where the buoy is before they recorrect. Again, imagine if you drove like that, right? Like you go, right, okay, I think, there's where I want to go. Right, I won't look for a while. I'll just look around, and then what I'll do is I'll double check in a minute that I'm still going in a straight line. You don't do that, When you ride your bike, you know what's going on. You're constantly looking around to check what you think you already know, if that makes sense. And swimming's no different. So you're not looking for the buoy. It's not like spotting is not taking 3 strokes, looking for the buoy, going, oh, there it is, and then putting your head back down and swimming again. Spotting is just checking what you already know to be the case.
So would there be situations where we wouldn't spot as often?
Well, yes, if you can definitely swim in a straight line, obviously you wouldn't need to spot at all. So if you're 100% certain that you can look at the buoy once and then swim in a straight line, I guess you don't need to spot. But there's probably more sensible examples than that.
Perhaps in a race there
or
could be.
If you don't care where you're going.
If you don't care where you're going, I guess that,
like, if it doesn't matter,
technically is an answer to that question.
Okay,
maybe
yes.
in a race scenario.
A race scenario, yeah. Okay, so if you're in a tactical situation in a swim, which in reality is you probably, without being, I don't want this to be taken out of context, but the reality is that
I've said it out if it is.
Yeah, the reality is that the tactical execution of a swim is probably more geared towards guys and girls that are, am I allowed to say girls anymore? I don't know, who knows, but you get my point.
Any of the athletes that might be at the top end,
the ladies
or
the men who may be at the front of the race, in organised packs, where there is a distinct race dynamic going on. You may not necessarily need to spot if you're in a group and you're confident that the athlete leading that group out can swim straight, or being in the group is more important than swimming straight. So even if you're not in a big group, even if you're just on one person's feet, if you're, sometimes you may decide that being on those feet is more important than swimming the straightest line, because of the energy you're saving and the fact that if you let a faster swimmer go away from you because you want to swim straight, they may actually get away from you. You may lose the feet altogether. So there may be times when you don't necessarily need to spot, or you feel that spotting is less important than something else that you're doing. So that can happen. So yeah, the boys and the girls that are at the front of the race, nearer the front of the race, where there is a tactical element to the swim, may not necessarily need to spot quite as much. I mean, I've gone long periods in swims, maybe 1,000 meters or more without spotting, because I've known, and sometimes I even know the athlete, so I know who the athlete is, and I know that I don't need to worry about whether or not they're swimming straight enough. I know that person's going to swim straight enough. It probably isn't the case further down the field, because the paces that you'll experience will be more inconsistent. People will be kind of executing the swim that is less tactical. So it may just be a matter of sort of finding a bit of a balance between a bit of drafting and a bit of swimming your own swim.
Yeah. And my last question
Yeah.
that I sometimes get asked is it important that people can learn to spot and breathe both sides so that they can spot whether they breathe to their right or they breathe to their left? How important is that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Okay, so there might be some coaches that shout me down for this, but look, the whole bilateral breathing thing gets on my tits as well, right? Okay, because I don't get it. You know, the ability to breathe both sides, the skill to be able to breathe both sides is important. For example, like again, if you're riding your bike, you know, it's like Zoolander, right? Zoolander can't turn left. Is that right? Is it left? You can't turn left, yeah. If you're riding your bike, you don't just go, oh well, I'm only going to look right. Yeah, I'm not going to learn to look to my left. Like, it doesn't matter. If there's an obstacle on my left, I'm just going to ignore those, right? So the skill of breathing to both sides, to be able to see what's going on either side of you, is important, because if everything is happening on your left, but you can only breathe to your right, that's going to be a disadvantage. If the chop is coming from your right and you can only breathe to your right, that's going to cause you some issues. I did have one athlete actually once who could breathe both sides, and at the end of the swim said how they'd been getting hit in the face by the chop all the race. And I did say to them, oh, why didn't you breathe to the other side? They went, oh yeah, it's a good idea, which was amazing considering they were capable of breathing both sides. I didn't account for that as a coach, but these things happen. So you know you need to be able to see what's going on. So you should practice the skill of breathing to both sides. It also, in reality, practicing breathing to both sides helps develop your proprioception in the water. It does do that. So, and you might actually discover things about your stroke that you didn't realise. It's a bit like doing drills or doing other strokes. You learn stuff about your swimming by trying different things. So sometimes you might find that you, in the long run, you actually are better at breathing to the side that you initially didn't breathe to. Yeah. So it's an important skill to practice. I personally breathe exactly half my swims to one side and half the other. Not half my swims. I don't do like a Tuesday to my right and a Thursday to my left. I mean, like, I alternate lengths. So I'm swimming 100 meters. I breathe going in one direction to my right, the other direction breathing to my left. I am actually a little bit quicker, a bit more efficient breathing to my left than my right. I know that, but about half a stroke a length. But that doesn't, you know, I don't not breathe to my right because I'm quicker breathing to my left. That's just doesn't make no sense, does it? I just keep practicing. Yeah. Footballers, you know, they practice a lot with their left foot, even if they're strong with their right, because you don't just go, well, I'm strong with my right, so I'll only practice my right. It don't make any sense. So it's important to be able to see what's going on both sides tactically, and being aware of that, and being able to breathe both sides is important because of the way the waves or the water conditions might like end up being on race day. That is a terrible sentence, but you know what I mean. But anyway, spotting. The question was about spotting both sides. Do you need to be able to spot both sides? Well, that's a good question. I can, but I am distinctly more competent spotting on my right breath. In fact, so to the point where I don't even think about it. It just happens. I just do it. So when I breathe, if I spot on my right hand side breath, which is ironic because I'm actually a better swimmer breathing to my left, I can seamlessly integrate that spotting into my stroke without even thinking about it. So I just spot without thinking about I'm going to spot. I just instinctively want to look, just like you might look around on your bike, and I just spot. On the other side, I have to think a bit more about it. I am consciously competent. So I'm unconsciously competent spotting on my right breath, consciously competent spotting on my left breath. So I don't spot on my left breath very often at all, only when it's absolutely essential. So I said that I have a pattern of spot right, 3 strokes, spot left, 3 strokes, spot right, 3 strokes, breathe left, 3 strokes, spot right, normally, okay? But if I need to spot more frequently, I'll double up the breaths on my right. So I'll go spot, spot, spot on my right, for example, and then I might go breathe, breathe, breathe on my left, spot, 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 whatever it is. And I'll just switch between the sides of breathing, depending on what I need to do. Because obviously the other thing is, once I have quite a high stroke rate, so breathing every 3 is okay for me in open water because I'm not tumble turning. So, you know, for those, this is going back to the bilateral breathing piece that does my head in. Coach, I need to breathe bilaterally. That's just bollocks. Watch any world-class swim race and you'll see that anybody swimming over like 200 meters breathes every stroke, right? You don't have anyone breathing every 3. So why triathlon coaches think, oh yeah, you've got to breathe every 3. And then we do hypoxic stuff, and it's like, you know, most people can't even swim. and we're worried about hypoxic training. You know, it's like you can't even properly swim yet. Like, learn to swim first, and then we'll worry about whether or not, like, you need to hold your breath a bit. Okay, because otherwise what happens is all you end up doing is just thinking, when's my next stroke? When's my next breath? You just, and then what you do is you do 5 quick strokes because you coaches said do hypoxic training. We do like 1 massive breath, then we do 5 quick strokes, and then we go again. Well, that's just crap, isn't it? That's not quality. So you don't need to breathe. In fact, don't breathe bilaterally. Right? If anyone's telling you to breathe bilaterally as a training process, they're just talking crap. Okay, can I say that?
Just to confirm as well, what we mean by bilateral breathing is breathing every 3.
Yeah, or every 5.
Or every 5, or every 7.
Which is not enough. Because breathing every 4 is not enough
as
either.
opposed to being able to breathe both sides. They're 2 very different things, just to clarify that.
Yeah. So practicing breathing both sides is one thing, but breathing less than every 2 strokes or every stroke, depending on how you count your strokes, is not a realistic expectation. It's already restrictive. You know, imagine if you're taking so most swimmers are taking probably, I don't know, like 50, most triathletes are taking 50 to 60 strokes a minute, which is too little anyway. Like most world-class swimmers are taking between like 70 and 100. But anyway, let's say you're doing 60 strokes a minute. That means that even if you breathe every 2 strokes, you're only getting 30 breaths a minute, right? If I said to you, you're going to go out running, but you're only going to take 30 breaths a minute, you think I was a bloody idiot, right? So, and if I said to you, you've got to take even less, like 20, or 15, because you've got to breathe every 3 or every 4, you honestly think I was a moron. And yet we have coaches saying to people, don't breathe every 3, plus do a tumble turn, so don't breathe for 2 strokes into the turn and then another 5 meters out. No wonder you puffed out, right? So in the pool, I have digressed quite a lot here, but anyway, in the pool, I breathe every 2 strokes or every stroke, depending on, again, how you count it, because I tumble turn, and when I tumble turn, it reduces the number of strokes I take every 50, right? In open water, I breathe every 3. 1, because I swim with a slightly higher cadence, and 2, I don't tumble turn. But even then, I can only sustain that for realistically, for about 15 minutes before I need to switch probably to every 2. So I go breathe, 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 breathe. Yeah, so I can look at what's going on around me. And sometimes I might only breathe one side for most of the swim. If, let's say, all of the chops coming in from my right, I might only breathe to my left, and occasionally breathe to my right just to check what's going on. So, yes, in summary...
I was going to say, should we summarise?
In summary, you should have enough skill to competently breathe to both sides without much difference between the 2.
Breathe and spot to both sides.
No. Well, no, I would say not necessarily, in my opinion. Breathe both sides, absolutely, in just the same way a professional footballer would want to be able to kick the ball equally well with both feet, but always still have a dominant foot.
Yeah.
Would always take a penalty with their dominant foot. Breathing, but yeah, look, yes, if you can spot on both sides, great. But if you have one side that's distinctly better and you don't have to think about the process, then if you only spot to that side, it's not done me any issues at all. Yeah, I haven't had a problem. That's never really caused me. I can spot to my left breath, but it's never really caused me a problem. Yeah. So there's quite a lot of myth busting in there.
Yeah, there is, yeah.
Because it does frustrate me, as you can probably tell. There's a saying that sport is cocked up by complicated coaches and confused athletes, and too many coaches overcomplicate the process. They get people doing all of this stuff when really most people can't even regularly swim 4k in a session, and then they wonder why 3.8k on race day is bloody hard. Well, because you're doing hypoxic breathing and all of these weird things in training sessions, when really you just need to be making sure you can get through 4k regularly first. Yeah, you need to build up to that. Turn up to an Ironman and you've only been doing 2k main sets.
You're probably going to struggle.
You're probably going to struggle with 3.8k off the straight off, followed by 6 to 8 hours on the bike and a marathon.
Agreed.
So yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, we've given you quite a lot of information there. I rephrase. Tom's given you quite a lot of information there, so let's just really quickly.
Slowly?
Yeah, sorry, you can rewind and slow it down if you need to. But let's just give you a very quick summary then of a couple of the points that we've made. So when most people tell us that they don't seem to be able to swim straight when they swim open water, usually the biggest reason is because they just don't spot regularly enough and check where they're going.
Don't swim straight.
We're summarising, Tom. We're summarising. How regularly should you spot? Well, in our experience, we tend to spot every 6 strokes or 3, depending on how you count them.
In summary, as often as you need to swim straight.
Or as often as you need
There you
to
go.
swim straight. So there could be situations where you need to spot every stroke, especially if some of the times you spot, you can't see the buoy because of the waves, the chop, other people, etc. So yeah, absolutely, as often as you need to be able to see and sense check where you're going. There might be situations where you don't need to spot, particularly if you've made a decision to draft and follow someone's feet. Plus, it's really important that you can breathe to both sides so that you have that option in a race. And if you can spot when you breathe to both sides, brilliant. But do you know what? If you have a dominant side, stick with that one, especially on race day. So there you go. There's a little bit of a summary.
Good. That's what I should have said.
That is what you should have said. And this video would have only been about 1 minute long as opposed to 15 minutes long.
But maybe
you've
not.
got both.
And not as funny.
Yeah. Here's the outtakes. Okay, just make sure that's about right.
Is they're looking for the buoy. So
Start that bit again. Just got this bit out.
yeah, go on.
We think it's breathing bilaterally every 3, 5, 7, etc.
Don't never swim. No, never do that. That's rubbish. No one has a stroke rate high
Okay, let's
enough to do
rephrase
that.
that bit because this is too much. I've forgotten what point.
This is going the outtakes. It's all right.
Okay. Plus, we think it's really important.